Continuing on with resolution. I know it may not be the most exciting area because we're not manipulating images or swapping heads or anything like that in Photoshop, but it is so important. Understanding image resolution is something you will be using in all of your classes. You need to understand images for the web. When you get into web design, you need to be able to even understand images if you're going to bring them into your videos. Once you do interactive media, if you're going to take that class, we're going to have to deal with image resolution, definitely in graphic design. So it's, and pretty much any kind of job that you would have outside of here, image resolution is something that will come up at some point. So it's really important that we understand it. So what does Photoshop offer to us right from the beginning to help us understand the size of our image? Is this an image that is set up for print or an image that is set up for the web? That's the first thing we want to be able to understand. So I have two images open here already, and I'm going to go over to Firefox, and I'm going to take this image of the cute cat. Oh, I didn't actually want to click on that, but that's all right. So cute cat. All right, let's take this image. I'm going to right click, copy image, go back over to Photoshop. I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut Control-N to create a new document. I also could go to File, New. I'm going to take from the clipboard and hit Create, and then I could go to Edit, Paste, or use the keyboard shortcut Control-V. So if you ever want to know what a keyboard shortcut is, it's also listed right there in the main menu drop-down. Okay, so what do we know about these images just from the get-go before we even try to find out exactly how much resolution do they have, or as I was explaining in the last video, how much digital data do they have? So if I look up here in the tab, it tells me the percent in which I'm viewing the image. That actually gives me a lot of information. This one is at 100%, this is at 25%, this is at 66%. So now is the moment that if we were in the classroom, I would ask you, what do you think that means? What does the one at 100% mean in terms of its size compared to the other one? And you would say, it's a smaller image. Yes, it's a smaller image. So if you have an image that is Photoshop is showing you at 100%, and it's only taking up a small portion of your image, of your screen, that means it's a small image, and this is something that is set up for the web. So one of the first big misconceptions about Photoshop is it doesn't matter. Photoshop is amazing. I could take this small image and I could print it to be 40 by 50 inches, right? Not exactly. We have restrictions. There's only a certain amount of digital information in this image. All we can do is decide how much of it to display per inch. And the smaller amount we display per inch, the more blurry the picture will be. So let's see, where do we go to find out about that digital information? We go up to Image, Image Size. And this is the window that tells us all about our image. It is set up for inches, which is fine, but if yours did appear in pixels, we could switch it right over here to inches. So this tells me, hey, this is going to print out at 8.6 inches by 6.5. That's not super small. True. But it's at a resolution of 72, which is the resolution we want for the web, not print. So again, now if we were in the classroom, I would ask you, what is our target print resolution? And you would say 250 to 300. All right, so I'm going to change this. Incidentally, if resample was checked for you, make sure it is unchecked. I'm going to change my resolution to 250 and watch what's going to happen to my width and my height. It got very small. So what I've done here is I had a fixed amount of pixels in my image, and all I've done is redistributed them. So these two have an inverse relationship. If I increase my resolution, that means I'm increasing the amount of pixels per inch, and so it shrinks down the physical size of my document. So now this image would actually only print out, if I wanted it to look sharp, at 2.5 by 1.8 inches. It would be small. And if I went for a higher print resolution, at 300, and then it's even smaller, 2.1. So the lesson is, if you have an image that is very small and you want to print it out, you really can't if you want to keep the high quality digital data. But what if you absolutely have to? So here's some steps. By the way, if you hold the Alt key down, your cancel key becomes a reset key and you can bring back the numbers you had before. So I'm going to reset this. So what can I do? Well, the first step is I'm going to increase my resolution to to my target, 250. And let's say I want to see, can I just fudge it up? I want to get it at least 3 inches. Well, you could make a choice to lower the resolution a little bit more. I'm going to put 225 and see if that gets you there. And if it still doesn't, well, Photoshop can do what's called resample. Resample is adding pixels for you. But before we talk about resample, I'm just going to show you a very extreme situation of resampling. You don't have to follow along like by doing this or anything. I just want to show you, what if I made a document that was 4 pixels by 4 pixels wide? It's super tiny. I need to zoom in. So let's zoom in so we can actually see this. Just holding the zoom key down. And I'm going to take my rectangular marquee and I'm going to select a pixel over here. So this has 4 pixels here. And I'm going to select black. And I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut Alt Backspace to fill that with color. And then Control D. We haven't talked about selections yet, but we will. Same thing over here. So now we have a document that has 4 pixels of black here, 4 pixels of white here, 4 pixels of black here, 4 pixels of white over here. And I'm going to go up to Image, Image Size, and switch this. I'm going to turn on Resample so I can switch this to pixels so we can just stay consistent with our numbers. It'll be a little easier to see how I'm going to make this jump because we were at 4 pixels by 4 pixels. And so what if I'm going to double this in size to 8 pixels by 8 pixels? So I'm keeping the same resolution. So this is not what I did before. What I did before was I had resample turned off and I just adjusted my resolution. So I wasn't adding pixels or taking away pixels. I was just shifting how many were displayed per inch. But now what I'm doing is I'm actually asking Photoshop to add pixels for me. So I hope that's clear. If not, email me, we can keep going over it. But I've asked Photoshop, add more pixels here. And let's click OK. And you can see it added the pixels for me, but this is essentially an extreme version of how Photoshop resampling, adding pixels makes things blurry. So it added them, but it didn't know what colors, so it did what's called interpolation. It basically blended from the colors of the pixels surrounding the area to add it. So this is something we really want to avoid. And incidentally, if you realize you resampled and that doesn't look good, and you go back up to image, image size, and you switch it back down again, do you think you're going to get the exact same colors that you had before? No. You see, I've lost that, the pure black to the pure white that I have. And now it threw away some pixels, but the ones that it threw away and that it kept were not my originals. So the end story there is, if you resample, you need to go back. You're going to use the history panel. Go back in your steps to before you added your pixels through resample. Now this makes it sound very bleak, like you can never ever use Photoshop to make things larger or else everything is going to look blurry. And incidentally, I did this example in black and white, but the same is true if I did it in color. Let's go back over to the image of our cute cat. And what could we do? Go over to image, image size again. And I'm telling you, I'm turning off resample. You're kind of stuck with whatever number you get here once you change the resolution to 250. I'm locking in. I'm not asking Photoshop to add any or throw away any pixels. So your two choices are have fewer amount of pixels per inch to get it larger here, or resample, so ask Photoshop to add pixels in very small amounts. So if I need to make it 50% bigger, instead of increasing it here 50%, do it in small amounts. So I'm going to turn resample on, and let's say I'll increase this up to 3. Notice, by the way, how when I adjust just the width, the height also changes, and that's because I have this locked, and I would say almost all the time you want to work with this locked. And then I'm going to click OK, and then I could go back up to image size again. Resample is on again, and then I could do 3.25, for example. So you're going to just do it in very, very small increments, because the theory is every time it's resampling, it's adding more pixels. Those pixels are closer to the original than if it had to do them all at once. So I really don't want you to get into the practice. The idea is to understand the size of your image and get that to be correct right from the get-go. But if you absolutely had to make something a small amount larger, you're going to do it through resampling in really small steps. All right, so moving over to these other two images, which one do you think is going to be the larger one? The one that we're seeing already at 25% or the one at 66%? And I'm sure you're telling me right now the correct answer. The larger one is going to be the one that is viewed at 25%. So what Photoshop does is it assumes that you want to be able to see the whole image, and you don't want it to open up like this. This is my image at 100%. And I think I mentioned this in the week 1 video, but if you hold the space bar down, you can get the hand tool, and that's how you can click and drag things around. That's this tool over here. I just like the keyboard shortcut, the hand tool. And then I can, when I let go of it, I'm back at whatever tool I was before. I'm going to right click and say fit on screen. And there it is, viewing at 32%. So let's see, what size is this image? Image size. This is set up for print resolution, and this could print at 14 by 9.5. So I could decide to sacrifice a little bit of that fine detailed resolution. So imagine it's kind of like the difference between making a mosaic with dimes versus nickels. So I'm going to make it more like it's at nickels. So I would put fewer amount of pixels per inch, 250, and which is still pretty good. And that would bump up the size a little bit. Oh, sorry, did I have it on resample? I'm going to reset that. I do not want it to resample. 250, and that bumps up the image size a little bit. All right, so that would give me a pretty good size image. And it's also showing you here, like, are you okay with what ended up happening here? Did it become too fuzzy? So I will reset it again, and we can look at what it was before as a comparison. And you can even zoom in more if you want to, if that becomes very important. So remember, all of the projects that you're going to be working on once we really get into the projects this semester will have to be set up for print. So you're not going to be gathering, when you're making a collage, you're not going to be gathering images from the web and expect those to take up the full size of your documents in Photoshop that are set up for the print. They'll be quite small. So you need to look for images that are large. And if I look for this one over here and I go up to image size, I can see that this is a 6:4, and turning off resample, I could lower the resolution a little bit if I wanted to get it to be a slightly larger image. Okay, so that's pretty much what I wanted to cover in this one, just understanding how to use the image size window, the difference with adjusting with resample. And in the next image, we're going to talk about something that you're going to have to do for all of your projects, where you're taking your large print image and you are making it smaller so that you can display it on discussion board.